I'll just start with some brief introductions, if we could move forward a slide. So I'm Dr. Emily Judson. I am the Head of Energy at Icebreaker One. So I oversee all of our work across this sector. And if we could flip forward a slide, I'll just briefly introduce our panel for the webinar today. So we have 3 guest speakers. We have Yingyi Wang from National Grid, Sarah Vaughan, who is our Open Energy Co-Chair, and Ankit Patel from ARUP. And we have 3 main goals for our webinar today. Next slide, please. So we're bringing this group together as a bit of a starting point to explore opportunities, challenges, and learning to support industrial and commercial participation in consumer-led flexibility. We are looking to demonstrate how a data sharing scheme could accelerate industrial and commercial flexibility at scale. And we are inviting the audience to engage in Q&A, a bit of discussion, and run through some opportunities to join our 2026 work stream. Couple of housekeeping points. There will be time for Q&A at the end, as we have a number of guest speakers in a relatively short time slots. If I could ask people to put any questions into the chat with your name, organisation, role, and if appropriate, the primary person who the question is directed at. We can come to questions at the end as a group, rather than doing them after each guest speaking slot. Final item is just this webinar will be recorded for publishing, so if you wish to stay off camera for that reason, that's fine. We do encourage people to come on camera, particularly for the discussion session, but that is obviously at your discretion. So next slide, please. If we can give a brief overview of our agenda for today. Firstly, we'll be hearing from Sarah. So she'll be presenting on placing the INC Flex in context. We'll then move to a session from Ankit on some reflections from ARUP's work in this space, and moving on to Yingyi for a perspective from her network, unlocking flexibility markets for INC consumers, opportunities and routes to participation, before moving on to some Q&A. So, without further ado, I will hand over to Sarah as our first guest speaker.
Thanks very much, Emily. Hello, everybody. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm Sarah Vaughan, as you see on the slide. I'm co-chair of Open Energy with Gavin. But those of you who might know me sort of with other hats on will know that I have been in the energy industry for probably longer than I care to remember now. And I do think that this whole topic is a really important one and also a potentially very exciting one. So if we move to my next slide, thank you. I thought it was worth just putting this in context to begin with, because we hear a huge amount about the domestic market and the domestic sector and the potential there. But actually, if you look at the figures, there is more sort of demand that is going through the INC sector than there is going out of the domestic sector. It's about 53%, over 50% of demand is in INC, as opposed to something like 30% of demand in domestic. So I just think that's an important thing that we all need to remember when we then look at the figures that are expected. So if we go on to the next slide, the Clean Power 30 slide suggested the potential for some 51 to 66 gigawatts of clean flexibility by 2030, which is about 2 to 3 times the amount that there is now. And then on this slide, you also see the potential growth up to 2050. Now, of that 51 to 66, around 10 to 12 gigawatts is consumer-led flexibility. So that's things like EVs, heat pumps, batteries, industrial processes. It's under the sort of category of, they tend to distinguish between short duration flexibility, which is also including things like batteries and interconnectors, and long duration electricity storage. So it is all within that. If we break that down and look at the next slide, it'll give us more idea of how I&C fits within that. So this is showing that within the 10 to 12 gigawatts that is proposed or envisaged, some 1.7 gigawatts is non-domestic consumer-led flexibility. And that's what you see in this chart. But ironically, the amount of I&C flex or non-domestic flex has fallen sharply since 2019, following various policy changes in the market. So in 2021, it was actually at 1.7 gigawatts. It then fell to 1.2 in 2022 and down to 0.8 gigawatts in 2023. So the aim really here is to get it back to 1.7. But I think that the potential could actually go far beyond that. So if you could move to the next slide around the potential scale. Thank you. So I think when you look at the sort of the little line here that says I&C, which is the one at the bottom, the focus here is on industrial processes, or for example, flexible use of cold storage, turning down supply. But actually, if you looked at this in terms of co-located tech, then the picture could be very different. So if, for example, you looked at batteries alongside the industrial processes, or if you looked at EV fleets, then the total picture could be much, much higher. And actually, if you look both at the 2030 slide, but also if you look at the 2050 slide, where, because it's a bigger block, you can actually see the sizes and the colours better. You can see that vehicle to grid, for example, that big orange block is a much, much bigger proportion of what the total expectation is. So when you read the policy around I&C flexibility, it is accepted that if you're going to bring this forward, what you need to do is to build confidence in the market and to make the journey easier. So to make easier things like onboarding, but also to give people who are going to participate in the market more confidence in it. You also possibly need to look at other things that go alongside it, like the associated carbon savings that come with flexibility, because that is something that is really important to some of the players in that part of the market. And if you could really measure it accurately, then that is something that is going to encourage them potentially to play more in that space. So there's clearly much more to learn about the potential here. And that was identified in the Clean Flexibility Roadmap. Now, I&C Flex can participate in, for example, local DSO markets. They could participate through NESO's DFS. They could participate through the balancing mechanism. There are plenty of opportunities where they can play. And I think we'll hear a lot more on that later. So I'm not going to go into that any further here. But I think that there is an important point which should be made around the potential both for demand turn down, so demand reduction, but also turn up, so to help manage excess solar generation. And this is something we've heard quite a bit from the government on recently. And it's also important to realise that, you know, this is either done on a regional basis, which, as I say, we'll hear more on, but also at a national market level. So the opportunities are varied. So if we just move on to the next slide, what is absolutely key to enabling greater participation in demand flexibility markets generally is data. And anybody who's been involved in open energy for any period of time will know that this is something that we have been banging on about for a very, very long time. And as it says here, you know, this is all about absolutely providing the foundations for the digitalization of the system. So here we're looking at things like the quality of the data, the standards of the data, the common underpinning through data infrastructure and interoperability. All of those things are needed in order to integrate flexible assets into the market. It is also vitally important to have visibility of what assets are out there in order to unlock flexibility and to help with network planning. So if we just go on to what is my final slide, because I don't want to exceed my time slot. In order to achieve this, we need to find a way to ensure trusted data sharing. A data sharing mechanism to accelerate participation in I&C flexibility is absolutely essential to make sure that doing so both benefits the system and also the customers that are participating. And that's really why we are here today. Open Energy has been working in this area for a number of years. I came in and joined them in 2021, and I have seen many of these themes running through all of the work that we have been doing in this space. And actually, Icebreaker One has, through its Perseus scheme, already shown the proof of concept and has delivered on this scheme. So this is, I think, the most natural place to explore the potential for I&C flexibility. I'll stop there, Emily, and I'm handing over to, I can't remember.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a brilliant picture to orient us in this space. So where I&C Flex is, where it needs to go next, and the capacity to scale. I just wanted to add one remark in relation to what you said. I think one thing that you've brought up that was really important from what we've discovered in early user needs research is the holistic picture of flexibility. Something that I'm sure will be a common thread among many attendees here today is the realization that user research in this area is at a very, very early stage of development, and we definitely need to have more connection, more research with end users and the consumer side to really discover how they picture value, how they make the business case, and as Sarah said, how you balance those customer and system benefits. So thank you for a very helpful orientation. I believe we are now moving on to Ankit, who is speaking without slides, so I'll hand over to you.
Amazing. Thank you, Emily. Hi all. My name is Ankit Patel. I'm a principal consultant in Europe, and I specialize in turning ideas into real products. I recently read the Flex Markets Unlocked program, and most recently supported City of Bristol in understanding their revenue potential with Flex Markets and virtual power plants, and how can they incorporate that as part of their local air energy plans. So I don't have any slides, so you just have to listen to me talk, which is good and bad in its own way. I want to start off with mentioning I&C is not one size fits all. So when you imagine a commercial fish shop, which will have very different flexibility profile in terms of how they use the energy, when can they flex, when can't they flex, than an industrial facility like a data center. So the type of actors that are in the I&C space vary widely, and all of them have their different needs across the board. Some might have an issue with revenue potential. Some might have an issue with not understanding where they can flex or the type of flexibility they can provide. Want to start the gaps and opportunities from a perspective of awareness first. So there is quite a bit of work that is happening in the space around increasing awareness of what is the flexibility potential for I&C space. Most people, when you would talk to a commercial shop, they're like, I didn't even know what flexibility is, or don't know what value that could provide. So NISO and Alexon are working on open products like the Market Navigator, where you as a commercial actor, can go and find out how much money can you actually make by providing flexibility. And that kind of leads into the incentives that you have around flexibility. There are two sides of flexibility. There's implicit and explicit. So implicit flexibility is you respond to market signals. Explicit flexibility is when you have designated time, like 4 to 5 p.m., that you will provide particular flexibility. It could be turn up and turning down. And this also varies. A lot of the times currently, when we talk about flexibility, we're talking about explicit flexibility. So Sarah mentioned about the various NISO products and the DSO products. DSO products are constraint management, which are procuring flexibility to go stop using your electric heater or whatever it may be between 4 to 5 p.m. and I'll pay you some money for it. That's explicit flexibility. From an explicit flexibility perspective, the revenue potential is just not there. Like the amount of money a commercial or industrial actor can make by providing explicit flex through the various market products that are offered is significantly less when you think about the actual work that needs to happen for these customers to understand what they need to do to actually participate in the markets. First is you will have an existing commercial industrial operating plant. I mean, that needs to be turned into some sort of a smart plant where you could respond to signals, turning it off and down. You don't actually do that manually with a physical switch. You do need to invest in control systems that can let you do that. Then that means you need to go and hire people to do that for you, and then train your internal staff to be able to manage that interface also. So there is quite a bit of overhead that is involved for an industrial and commercial actor to participate in flexibility, which when you look at it from an explicit side, the money just doesn't add up. It's a completely different case when you start talking about implicit flexibility, which is prices are really high right now, so I'm going to turn on my infrastructure so I don't have to pay those high charges, and that will scale significantly when we get into market FRA settlement and a lot of the other regulatory changes that are coming in. But the challenge there is, how do I actually respond to these signals? Do I know enough about how the energy is being used in my infrastructure to be able to go and make those decisions? That's also a question mark right now. Most organizations don't really have a good understanding of how the electricity is being used in their infrastructure because it's not a thing that most people care about. They need to run their business. They need to run their business because they have to serve their customers. But that step in understanding their energy profiles is relatively difficult and something that requires investment for you to get into. The technical demands are somewhat rigid, but the market products are being streamlined for the INC customers to access into, and they're very similar to the domestic spaces. So there's not a huge difference between the domestic and the INC space from that perspective. So the last thing I would mention is the way to understand INC customers is by understanding their business first, and then how flexibility will fit into their business. When we start looking at data sharing or trust frameworks, kind of the purpose of today's topic, this is not any different than what's already happening in some cases with the domestic side of things. So we need to understand the information that is being shared, not just with the DSOs or the DNOs, but also the information that they want to share internally between the different departments in their own teams, and also to any wider reporting they might need to do in other cases. So the way to think about the challenge here from at least a data sharing and a trust framework perspective is what data needs to be shared to whom. That is over and beyond just the interface that you have with the regulator or the market operator. In time there, so hopefully.
Yeah, perfectly in time. Thank you very much. I haven't had to put my timekeeper hat on at all yet. But yeah, thank you for some very interesting reflections. I particularly appreciate your point about segmenting the customer base within the overall INC sector, as there are some very different businesses, different site constraints, different operational methods within that. And also your point about internal as well as external data sharing. That was very insightful. I'm sure that will generate some questions in the Q&A. But before we move on to that, Yingyi, you're up next. Could we have the slide pack back up and ready as well? I'll pass on to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi everyone. My name is Yingyi Wang. I'm the Flexibility Commercial Manager in National Grid DSO Flex Markets team. Please can we move to the next slides? Yeah. So I will start with emphasize how flexibility is important to us, as everyone has known. Decarbonization, decentralization, and digitalization definitely bring new challenges to us as a system operator through increasing electrification and more renewable generations and storage connected to our network. While network investment are still very essential, this must accompany with increased use of flexibility.
Wow.
Because flexibility is such a powerful tool to ensure the capacity of our network can meet the needs of our existing customers and future customers when and where they need at the lowest possible cost. Next slide, please. Before I start talking about the INC challenges, I would like to give people who are not quite familiar with our market a very quick introduction about what we are procuring. We are procuring 3 products in 2 different timescales. So we have the long-term market, which is a year-ahead market. Normally, it will open in the September-October time. We're gonna avoiding people a 1-year long contract. So in the long-term market, we procure a product called SAOU. So basically, this is a product we procure the capacity we need at the year ahead, and we will make the dispatch decision at the day ahead. So people will have the availability payment as well as the utilization payment if they get dispatched. This product is quite suitable for the providers who are confident to make the commitment, lock their capacity at the year ahead stage. We also have a premium service called OYO, operational utilization. So this is our premium post-fault service. This service is suitable for the providers, can quickly respond to our instructions and get delivered within the 15 minutes. They can express their interest in the long-term tender, and we will make the decisions near the real time. We also have another product called SEO, scheduled utilization. So this is a product we procured both in the long-term and short-term market. So it is a service with fixed delivery periods and can be pre-agreed with the providers. So it's quite suitable for people who are not that flexible, but can relatively responding near the real time. Next slide, please. If you are interested with the scale of our market, so the metrics on this slides can give you some ideas about how quickly and how our market has been expanded in the last 3 years. In our latest long-term tender closed last year, we have procured 196 gigawatt hour of flexibility. That's nearly about 10 times as big as what we have procured the year before. Now we have more than 300 key assets registered on our market platform. That gives us about 2.7 gigawatts capacity available to dispatch. That's nearly double as what we have last year. And as a result, we saved about 3% of the cost reduction delivered to our end consumers. Next slide, please. Now we need to zoom in to how INC can really help us. So INC Flex can play a vital role in our market, contribute to both the traditional Flex use case, as Antic just explained, as well as the new use case we identified last year. So on the left-hand side, this is explain how the traditional use case are working. We normally use the Flex to manage the input thermal constraints we have on the system, where we see the demand exceed the network capacity. So we will require demand to turn down or the generation to turn up. INC providers can reduce their usage or reschedule some of their non-critical process to a different time, If they have on-site generation or storage, they can reduce the grid import by using the electricity of their own. On the right-hand side, I would like to highlight this is a new Flex user case we identified last year. So I think we are the first DSO bring this up. So we have been quite creative to introduce a product called Flex Up. This is something, this is a new service we introduced to help to accelerating the renewables get connected to our network without curtailing them when they are output. So basically, INC providers can provide us a demand turn-up service by shifting or increasing the load when we have surplus power on the grid. They can also discharge their batteries or curtailing the solar panels if they get those kind of assets on the site. Next slide, please. Yeah, well, the value is pretty clear. But we are seeing today is INC Flex still remain underrepresented in the market participation. So if we look at the assets registration on our market platform, from the number of assets point of view, among the 300K assets we have, we only have around 300 INC assets. That's probably about 0.1% of the total assets we got. Most of them are the INC generations. Despite the proportion is fairly small, they actually provide over 60% of the total capacity on our platform. But if we zoom in the industrial process, which is at the moment categorized as the flexible size demand, we only have less than 100 megawatts there. So potential is very huge, but the reality is they still underparticipated. Next slide, please. Yeah, there's no doubt that INC participation sits at the heart of how we see the flex market is going to evolve. But we also recognize we're still facing lots of the challenges. The first thing is from a demand perspective, there are some misalignment between where the constraints exist and where the INC Flex is currently located. So quite often we get in touch with some of the INC Flex. They're quite interested to offer the Flex to us. However, they're not located in a live zone at the moment. From a supply point of view, as Antic has mentioned, a large portion of the industry loads are process-driven, which means they are less interruptible and less able to respond to our flex signals, as it will be really complex and costly for them to change their business process. But what we can offer back is not very attractive. That links perfectly with the next blockers, which we have heard a lot about. At the moment, the DSO market doesn't really offer them a stable, longer-term revenue visibility, makes them difficult to justify the investment they want to make. At the moment, the max length contract we can offer is just 1 year, which is not really attractive commercial proposition for them, I guess. Finally, there are definitely more we can do to facilitate the market participation. Lots of people have feedback to us like they're not quite clear about what are the flexibility available, opportunities available to them. If they want to participate, where should they get a start? And also how they can stack the revenue together with the other markets, like the wholesale market, capacity market, NESOS market. So it's not really 100% clear how they can do that. Next slide, please. Not sure if the size is a little bit small for you to read, but basically this is what we are currently working on, which is about what we're going to do to develop our DSO market in the next 2 years. It's still working in progress. Hopefully we can publish a final version sometime in May. At the high level, there will be 3 key areas which are going to help to address the challenges we mentioned previously. Firstly, we will carry on growing the opportunity itself by extending the more user cases we can use Flex to increase the way Flex can be utilized and created more opportunities for the revenue stream for the INC providers. So one of the user case currently we are working on is to understand how we can use the flexible resources to help manage the voltage and stability. Secondly, it's about improving the overall participation experience. This includes better data access, customize the marketing and participation guidance for INC consumers, improving our platforms, and simplify the customer journey to reduce the barrier to entry. Lastly, we will continue to make our market more coordinated and stackable, so it will be more feasible for the INC participants to stack revenue with other markets. So all three things, we can't make it happen without good data and data sharing infrastructure. So this is the area we see great opportunities. We can work collaboratively with OpenEnergy in the coming year to make the real difference. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is my last slide. So basically, if you're interested with our market or would like to know more, please use the link provided on this slide or get in touch with our team. Really looking forward to hear from you. That's all from me.
So thank you very much. It was really useful to have a practical example and to hear a lot more about how local flexibility markets work and some of the innovations in your space, plus direct reflections on barriers to use. This ties into a question that I was going to pose to the group at large as we move into the Q&A space. Just a couple of reflections from our speakers before we do that. There's a few recurring themes that I'm hearing here, which I think are really important to note within our icebreaker team as we move on to running our advisory groups on this use case and the rest of 2026. We will give you some sign-up links and further information in a minute, but I'm hearing repeatedly that the INC sector is not one size fits all. We must understand user needs and benefits to end consumers, as well as system needs and benefits, and that there are some things there which might be considered to be not in conflict, but there are sensitive ways to work those out. I'm also hearing that data sharing has a significant capacity to accelerate participation here, but this is not simple. There's internal data sharing challenges as well as external ones. And to make a scheme work, we would need to be able to deal with diversity of data sets with different sensitivities and different sensitivity types. Final thing is that I'm hearing that the market is developing. There's an active opportunity to educate and raise awareness amongst end users and to co-develop any data sharing scheme with innovations in flex markets themselves, as there's new ways to participate that are coming online quite quickly. So that was a really interesting set of thoughts. Thank you very much to all of our speakers, and I will move into the Q&A. We've got about we could probably fit in just under 15 minutes. So I will come to the chat first, as I can see we've had something from Grant Wilson in there. Grant, would you like to pose your question, or would you prefer that I read it out? Okay, I will read this. It's directed to Yingyi. In terms of the length of time contracts, a year was mentioned. What are the challenges of increasing that time window?
Yeah. So basically, there are a couple of things we need to consider. The first one is the ED2 and ED3. So at the moment, ED2 is just 5 years length. So the price mechanism we need to be governed under that structure, which we can't really promising anything bigger than 5 years, that's for sure. Another thing is related with how we currently manage the constraints on our network, because the constraint zones we are forecasting basically based on lots of the forecasting data. So lots of the things can change really quickly beyond a year's time. So at the moment, we don't have that much confidence that this constraint still being there after 1 year or two. So it's really hard for us to say, oh, I would like to give you a 5-year contract, those kind of things. So it's kind of between the regulatory requirement, not requirement, but regulatory limitations, as well as we currently use the flex just to manage the constraints, and the way how we manage the constraints is like, yeah, the forecasting is not gonna be not very accurate beyond a certain time horizon.
Thank you. I'm wondering if any of the other panel members have anything they'd like to add to this point on contract length and other kind of barriers to participation on that side.
I had one actually, Emily. If I could come in on that, I wanted to just ask, and I think Yingyi's probably got the best idea, so forgive me for asking you a question, Yingyi. But you talked about one of the things that put people off was the need to make the investments, and Grant asked about the duration of the sort of contracts that you could offer. But just in terms of practicalities, what are the investments that what do people need to invest in, if you like, to enable this for them? You know, what does the kit look like? Is it, because you know, if you look at something like batteries, the long duration energy storage, then there is a cap and floor scheme, because it is a multi-million-pound investment. But what sort of investments are we looking at here to be able to interact with your system?
Yeah, so the most common one is like additional generation or storage on site, because lots of the INC providers they can't really change their production process easily. But we normally just say, what if you have an on-site generation or storage to help you? That means you don't need to, change your business process to participate in the flex market. But then they will say, actually, that will cost us money. But at the moment, we're really not sure whether we can get that investment back. So that's the investment we talk mostly about, additional equipment on site to help them to be more flexible.
I see. And presumably then there's also some sort of interface. I'm thinking of a magic box with your system to automate it all for them.
Yeah, so basically, so operating that asset is another thing, because they probably need another, energy manager to optimize things for them. So they don't have that knowledge, they don't have the capacity. Also, there are some hardware they need to build the API to be able to receive our dispatch signals, that kind of stuff. So, but that wouldn't be too costly, but still there are some extra cost there as well.
And then I'm going to sneak in a third one. I've seen the questions come in, but do you find yourselves in competition with suppliers and aggregators here? So you want it for system purposes, but they may want it to go and participate in national grids markets, for example. Sorry, yeah, you know what I mean, the national market.
Yeah, I don't think we and NISO market are competitive relationships, because our market can be stackable with NISO market.
Yeah.
So basically they can, if they wants to participate both, they can get both, and they should be awarded, twice if the capacity can help both national market and our market.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you very much. I'll
So
hand back to
I could just
Emily.
jump into that too on that point.
Okay.
When you think about your supplier competition with the system operators, this is the very definition of implicit explicit flexibility. You're doing implicit flexibility because the supplier is telling you you're getting lower tariffs. You're doing explicit flexibility to support grid services, which can work together. So you could be on a lower tariff and getting lower tariff at the same time providing grid services. So they kind of go hand in hand. And then in terms of the Yingyi's point about the stackability of the different markets, one of the things to be conscious about is when we say stacking, we're not actually saying you get money from one market and the other market for the same megawatt at the same time. It's still offering the same service at different intervals. It's just that you can move between one market and another market for that 30-minute, after that 30-minute interval has been done. So just be conscious of the terminology, because people do misunderstand what stacking is.
I think our market can co-delivery with DFS. So that's, yeah, basically they can get double paid.
Yeah, that's we will come back to that.
I think we've got a live question in the chat from Rich Hampshire. Ankit, just as you were speaking, it's directed to you. On the note of implicit and explicit flex, his question is, how do your comments on explicit flexibility not having as much value for INC consumers reconcile with Ying Yi's presentation, which seems to be offering explicit flexibility propositions? And what insight does this provide for the shape of what an attractive proposition looks like for INC providers? I'll come to you.
The way to look at it for INC providers is not one or the other, like I was saying earlier. So if you were going to invest money into these smart control systems, you're going £200 for a smart switch, £1,000 for your building energy management system, etc., and training of your staff. You want to do both, and you want to look at your processes. How can you do implicit flexibility? So when your tariffs are higher, can I turn certain things off and not use energy, or use energy from your battery, which you do at a domestic level? And then from an explicit perspective, understand when can you provide that opportunity to the NISO markets and the DSO markets, and stacking that revenue. So it can't be one or the other, and you have to look at it holistically. How can I generate the most revenue from doing both those things at the same time? But that fundamentally implies, before you invest in the control systems, is, can I actually do that in my operations? Do I have the ability to do that? Do I have enough understanding of how I run my business to be able to go, I can turn certain things off, on and off, which actually doesn't exist in most cases right now.
Ying, do you want to comment on that as well?
Yeah, I think I agree with what Antic has said. I think, yeah. So basically, I also believe implicit flex is really the flex we want to grow, because if you look at the CP30 number, so even though the the consumer-led flex is about 10 to 12 gigawatts, I think the majority is implicit flex. So it's really important that we make that part right. So as a system operator, we just do the residual things. So yeah.
Thank you. I can see we've got some discussion breaking out in the chat as well. So I'd like to come to the next comment. This is from, I really hope that I pronounced your name right. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Dermot Cohen. A lot of businesses arrange their energy supply contracts through TPIs, such as brokers, becoming the gateway for a lot of SMEs to flex markets, particularly if bundling could be offered. The government has set out that it will introduce a regulatory framework for TPIs. What would the presenters like to see in that regulatory framework to ensure that all INC is more confident in engaging in flex? So this is TPI specific and INC flex confidence. Dermot, feel free to come in if you'd like to flesh anything out in the question as well.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's one of those sort of parts of the market that's not really discussed, is how a lot of these small businesses purely use brokers for their interaction with the energy market. They don't have a direct relationship with their supplier, and that is essentially both a barrier and an opportunity for engagement in flex if the regulatory framework is right. I think I know Ofgem are going to be the regulator in that space, and they're gearing up for that. But is the market ready for that kind of discussion, and are we thinking further enough ahead about what that interaction looks like, particularly for flex? So it's just purely about the question of, like, what do we need to be seeing, and what kind of baseline would we like Ofgem to do? There's two opportunities here. You can go for an outcomes-based approach, like they're taking the consumer markets, or you can go for a very strong regulatory enforcement route. So it depends on those principles we need to think about and setting up, and what we think could be beneficial for government to be thinking about.
Can I come in on that, Emily? E.ON, when I was at E.ON, we tried for many, many years to persuade regulators that a code of conduct should be put in place for TPIs. and we managed to get a number of the other large suppliers on board with that. It was always quite difficult, again, because of competition law, whenever you're getting together with your suppliers, as you can imagine, albeit that it was for the greater good. But one of the key things, and actually Grant has picked up on it, I mean, it was about shining some light on it, getting some transparency into the relationship. Because one of the things that we did find was that the less scrupulous TPIs were not very clear about what they were making out of the contracts that they were entering into with I&C customers. And that was not disclosed to them. In fact, in many cases, the TPIs were making more money out of the contracts than the suppliers were. And so Grant is saying, I'd like to see all pricing from TPIs to be openly available and API accessible. I strongly agree with that. And I think that if there is a role for TPIs in the flexibility space, then it's important that that transparency gets shone on those as well. It's quite difficult to get one's head around quite how it would work, but I can see exactly where Dermot's coming from on it.
Thank you. I can see that we've got a hand up. Esther?
Hi, thanks. I thought I'll come in. So I'm from Ofgem, and I'm going to be leading work on I&C Flex starting in a couple of weeks' time. So I thought I'll come off mute and just say that at Ofgem we will be looking, at how we can support I&C Flex through other areas that we regulate, and we have been doing some thinking around TPIs, and their role in, I guess, promoting I&C Flex. So yeah, finding all of these discussions very, very interesting.
Thank you. With consciousness of time, I think we have a moment probably for one last question, and then I'll just move on to closing remarks and next steps. Does anyone have any burning questions they would like to ask the panel, or would you be happy for me to pose a final one from myself? With no hands up, I'm going to take that opportunity. I'm aware that I don't think we've got any I&C owned customers online, but particularly from anyone in the wider audience that has had direct interactions with them. Do you have any comments about what the top thing we could do in the data space to encourage further participation would be? So both panel and audience, that question's posed to.
The one thing I would say is we can, and there's quite a bit of work already happening in this space. So it's work that I've led in Flex Markets Unlocked around standardization. So can we standardize the way data is shared right now with the different baselines that are across the different products, and the requirement of sharing and dispatch signals that are coming from the different NISO and DSO to be a little bit varied? We could streamline the operations for the I&C customers, but again, there's quite a bit of work that's already being done in this space. So I think it's more about scaling that implementation as quickly as we can.
Brilliant, thank you. Sarah, Ying-Yu, have you got any final thoughts on this?
Sorry, it's Ken here. It's
Yeah.
been a very long time since I worked on flexibility, but back in the day, the number one thing for our customers at British Gas when I was in their area was the ability. Well, I mean, it's accurate forecasting. Because when the customers go out to buy their kind of tranches of peak and base load power, the reconciliation process, if that forecast is not correct, can be quite a tiresome process. And again, things may have changed, the accuracy may have gone up, but for me, back then, and again, it's showing my age, probably about 10, 15 years ago, the forecasting of future demand was the biggest problem for them.
Thank you. We're going to have to draw the discussion to a close in about a minute, so just final opportunity for any final thoughts. Okay, if we could bring up the slide pack just on our final slide, please. I will draw this to a close. I just wanted to take a few minutes before we close the webinar to talk about next steps. It's been a very rich discussion today, plenty to leave us to think about, certainly within Icebreaker. First of all, if you have any questions or comments or connections to me made, my follow-up, we have left our Open Energy email on the screen here. We'll also be sharing slides of attendees by follow-up, so please do get in touch. But it's really just from our perspective to say that this is not a one-off. This is part of a work stream that we will be expanding across 2026. So this is really a call to action to get involved. We do plan to have a webinar series on this content. So this one will be available as a recording. If there's further sharing that you would like to do, you can please share that with your networks or anyone else within your organisations that you think might be useful to bring into this conversation. We're planning a couple of other dates in the webinar series for later in 2026, early 2027. And between now and then, in Q3 of this year, we will be starting to meet some advisory groups. We have open expression of interest forms, which we will circulate. I believe colleagues are circulating them in the chat, and we will also do as follow-up. So in Q3, we'll be running AG1 on user needs and impacts, and AG2 on technical implementation. For existing Open Energy members, you're welcome to join these or pass them on to colleagues. Those of you who have joined who are not Open Energy members, please get in touch to discuss how you can participate if that's of interest. And again, please do pass these on to anyone in your network that's not present on the call today. Just to flag a couple of other ways to get involved in the ongoing conversation. For Icebreaker 1 members, we have a cross-sector workshop and networking meetup in London in June. INC Flex will be one of the kind of discussion tables in that, among other things. So feel free to get involved or to join us. And as has been pointed out in the chat, we also have a tool called Constellation, which is a way of connecting with others in our network. It is free to join, and the sign-up link is on the slides. I think that is everything from us. Other than that, just to say a huge thank you to our panelists and everyone who's participated in discussion. Please do follow up if you're interested, and we look forward to continuing the conversation in due course. Thank you.